Hello everybody, this is Inushib, and we're going to be talking about a rundown of the new secret patch that we've been testing on PvE, secretly within a few closed testers that will be shipping out next week. Um, Before we get into it, if you could like, subscribe, and comment, maybe if you like the video, that is, you can leave a like. But if you think of something that you liked of this video, if you think of feedback, if you maybe have some ideas for the next secret patch that we should test internally, then I would appreciate if you leave it in the comments. I'll try and respond to whatever's down there and interact with you guys. But either way, let's get onto it. Ari. Now this is going to be the first in a few changes involved with pay to win and um, making the game easier for the people that have a lot of money, which is generally what we wanted to do. We're 10 years late on it. Took a little time for us to build the company on skins, but now we feel comfortable, with the new Ari Prestige Razer headset with cat ears. We're going to roll out this change where if a pair of cat ear headphones are plugged into the summoner that is playing Ari's computer, the enemies will give you some gold each minute in an effort to sim for you. And this is not targeted towards one gender because several males have worn cat ear headphones. I think there's a picture circulating of world champion 80 carry Bang wearing cat ear headphones, um, among others. So this isn't necessarily a buff towards females playing Ari, but it is a welcome change for at least for us at Riot in our in us rolling out changes that will make it so that players that have money will have a better time playing League of Legends and will make the experience more fair towards them, which is generally the only demographic of player that we care about. Now we have Anivia. Anivia gains scaling armor, and I think what we have on PB is 1 second increased duration on her stun if the player or if the summoner playing her has poultry in their freezer. Now, it does not have to be chicken. It does not even have to be turkey, which is a more common meat. You could have ostrich in your freezer for all we at Riot Games care. As long as you have it, then you'll be gaining these bonuses, and this is healthy. That it encourages. Poultry is a great meat to eat. Is the more popular ones, turkey and chicken, are healthy meats. So we're encouraging the healthy aspect where obviously you don't eat it frozen, you don't eat it raw, but we're encouraging you to always have some chicken in your freezer so that if you ever get hungry while you're gaming, you can maybe defrost it, and 18 hours later when you're on your 17th ranked loss, you can pop some chicken in the oven and throw it in a frying pan while you're in between queues or death timers or whatever, and maybe you whip out a Nivea when you still have some in the freezer and take advantage of her higher armor and her higher stun duration. Next we have Annie. Annie is a champion now who is pretty much invulnerable to top laners if they damage her at all. If they make physical contact with her, then they will be going to jail. Same for any champion that takes Predator against her, they will also be going to jail. This makes Annie a terrific champion to pick into champions that do like to pick Predator. Namely, not a lot of champions have been taking it recently, but Gragas took it a decent bit. Volibear jungle. If the rune ever gets big, Annie will be big to counter it, and also top lane Annie will be absolutely horrendous to deal with because she will be able to basically coast through landing phase, abusing the enemy without them being able to touch her. And this is if the enemy is playing a contact champion, which ultimately is what we want to do. We want to protect the youth of Runeterra, make sure that they do not fall prey to the foul top laner. And this does not go for every top laner. There are just some top laners that will be enticed by an Annie playing top lane alone, and we want to make that not be a reality. So we have Caitlyn. Caitlyn, we listened to your feedback, and we want to deliver this to all the players that get really angry at their team, which is the people that they verse. Caitlyn will be able to murder people in real life with her sniper rifle. She will be able to target enemy summoners and even ally summoners with her sniper rifle, and she will be able to assassinate them. This is a change that we've been workshopping a lot, but we cared too much about the player base in the past, and if a dwindling player base becomes more of a concern, we'll make it so that you have to pay for something similar to a Wii Remote holder like you have for a fishing game on the Wii, where you would need to have a certain peripheral to be able to shoot enemies with Caitlyn's ultimate and kill them in real life, but which would be unveiled alongside our Ari, Yasuo, and Zed Kevlar lines, where you'll be able to buy Kevlar and Riot gear, a sort of Riot gear with Zed, Yasuo, and Akali cosmetics on them. We're pretty excited. That should launch before the Ari headset, because the we don't want our player base to die. So if they can purchase some of that Kevlar, then they will. That's more of a pressing purchase than cattier headsets. But all the same, this is a welcome change for a lot of Caitlyn players. That if a jungler ganks you once, then you can kill them in real life, which in turn makes it so that jungle pressure towards Caitlyn lanes is drastically less once Caitlyn hits level 6, and which really pairs well with the champion and what she likes to do within the laning phase. If you have Camille, um, whenever Camille hits a champion with the third Q, which is the Q that you wait for after using the first one, you give the enemy summoner, uh, the summoner that plays the champion that you hit, a progressively worse haircut. Now, what this does for Riot, the reason that we at Riot want to implement this is because the worse haircut you have, the more incentives you'll have to stay inside, because it is horrendous. You don't enjoy looking at yourself in the mirror with it, and you would much rather play League for extended periods of time, because really there's nothing much more to do. So this is Camille, with how popular she is right now. She is definitely going to boost the player base, or at least the amount of hours the player base sinks into this game. And also, you may be wondering, what happens if a player is already bald? Well, she will draw on their head in permanent marker, I believe, though that could be subject to a hotfix, and it could just be highlighters or washboard markers, non-toxic, obviously. But and to enemies that have very little hair, she will also draw and maybe shine their hair up real nice. Camille used to be a barber, I believe, before, or a hair cutter, before she got into bungee jumping around cities and generally being a nuisance. Maybe I didn't read the lore recently, but maybe the lore is that since she is a robot or part robot, and she doesn't have maybe real hair, that she wants to take it away from the summoners. That could be something that the lore department could add later on, but we do believe that this will boost the player numbers, and it will fix the North American servers, because a big problem with North American servers is there's not a high player base, but this will ensure that a lot of people are playing the game when they risk Camille. So assuming that she's not permabanned, we will have a higher player base, lower queue times, and generally a better experience in servers with low population. We have Cassiopeia. This one's pretty simple. The summoners that that are playing the champion that gets ulted by Cassiopeia also need to turn around. So, let's say this happens 10 or 15 times in a game. You're getting a little bit more exercise, which going back on the poultry, the frozen poultry Anivia patch, this is definitely something welcome. I want to promote health improvement, so turning around that bit, it gets your body moving. It definitely it's definitely a step in the right direction, whether it is a long step at the maximum of the stride of the stepper or a tiny baby step is up to you to decide, but we are definitely more health conscious as a gaming company, which I say immediately after talking about a change to a champion that'll make players stay inside and play for longer because their haircuts will be hideous. Either way, next change we have the Corki change. I believe a lot of people have talked about this being a change that they want to see in the game, so we listened. At Riot, we listened to our community with open ears. We definitely keep the lines of communication open, and we are excited to announce that finally, when Corki uses his package on a female champion, he will be allied with a political elite, which will allow him to rig enemy surrender votes in his favor. Corki, it was either that if he uses his package on a female champion, he would go to jail, or he would be allied with a political elite. And one of those perspectives definitely is more biting. It's more of a satirical piece talking about the modern political landscape, whereas the other one is kind of a repeat um, of the Annie patch change, which we found early in the development of this patch. So we wanted something fresh. Corki is going to be an insane early game champion, and Corki, it's definitely a strange champion dynamic that we hadn't thought of, where um, Corki can end a game at 15 minutes with the right rigging of the surrender vote if he's rising a female champion, but he can also destroy teams late. So Corki never really gets weak, and this means, this is made even better um, by the fact that Corki is going to be an incredible champion to utilize in the draft phase, where people are going to be picking female champions last. Any female champions that is meta will be picked late in the draft to avoid Corki being pulled out and a vote being swayed because of Corki's affiliations in government. Next we have Darius. Darius and his bleeding passive will now cause bloodborne illnesses that champions may have to spread. Most notably, we have AIDS. AIDS will be spread between champions if one champion has AIDS. We don't know how big that is in Runeterra at the moment, but if there are any bloodborne diseases, they will be spread. And Darius will have. We wanted to shift Darius into more of a Brand type champion, where Brand will throw his ultimate into the enemy team and watch them explode. Darius will make one champion bleed, and then he will try and force the sheep back into the flock, making it so that the bloodborne illnesses that the that the poor enemy champion has will transmit to the enemies and overall hinder their chances at a victory. So Darius will definitely play more methodically, more he wouldn't want to dunk a lot of times because that could hinder him spreading his disease. So it'll force a lot of Darius players to think more about the team fight and how they can maneuver it, sort of, when they want to use their abilities and whatnot. So you have Evelyn. At level 6, once you get her invisibility, the screens of enemy summoners will be filled with hot women in your area ads. It's pretty self-explanatory. It forces a higher APM playstyle from the enemies, as they will be exiting out of ads constantly. Evelyn does not even need to be near because necessarily the hot women in your area part, the ads are a lie in real life. They are a lie in Runeterra. It's just to make you, forced to be aware of that Evelyn is in your area, and this could legitimately be a buff for some players that are fast at Xing out of ads because you will never forget that Evelyn is potentially behind your turret waiting to dive you. So we're gonna monitor this to, we're gonna be reading the Evelyn main subreddit, and generally we're gonna be monitoring all of the subreddits for champions that we change in this patch to make sure that we're making the right decision. So Evelyn could be nerfed this patch, could be buffed, depending on who you're versing. We'll definitely see. Moving on to the next one, we have Fiora. This one's also a pretty simple one. All enemies must be hugged against a wall at all times. This will make champions like Anivia and Talia better because they'll be able to create terrain to make their team's map movement better. But Fiora generally will get buffed by this because of the crippling problems that she provides to the enemy's movement. But also she will be, I suppose, nerfed because everyone's always going to be hugging a wall, so she's never going to be able to max out her ultimate unless the enemy gets displaced. But overall, this is a buff, just like most of these changes are buffs to the champion that we are changing. Um, just this will create an interesting dynamic. Fiora will be able to team fight better with everyone against the wall because it'll be easier for her to single out a target and then end up cleaning up after some targets are isolated. The team fight landscape will be a lot different, so Fiora will definitely benefit from this and not be forced to split push the entire game. We have Galio, champion with a jawline as chiseled as he was out of something that looks like marble, and I think he has like petricite somewhere to absorb magic, or I don't know if I'm getting mixed up about that, but either way, um, the main point is that he has a very manly jawline, and using that jawline, he intimidates the enemy. He doesn't intimidate the enemy champions. He intimidates the enemy summoners that have weaker jawlines than him into moving slower, into taking more damage from him, and into dealing less damage to him. So Galio is going to be a great pick in pro play if the pros, if you see a pro team drafting Galio, you can be sure that they are targeting one or more players on the enemy team with weak jawlines. It's an incredible mental tactic that we want to add to drafting to make it more complex. We're really, we at Riot are definitely trying to break the bank in terms of adding all these changes that are forcing the game to be looked at a different fashion. So Galio and his jawline, it's definitely going to add a lot of dimension to pro play, but also to solo queue, because if your teammate is flaming you, but the enemy team has a Galio and the person who's flaming his champion is walking and is hunched over, you suddenly don't feel as bad because you know that person lost the genetic lottery, at least in terms of their jawline. So Galio's going to be an interesting champion. Don't think it's one of the more overpowered or underpowered changes. It's relatively in the middle. We will obviously monitor all of this, but he's not necessarily on our watch list in a red zone. We have Garen. This is a collaboration with Nintendo actually, where we are importing Meta Knight's Neutral B from Super Smash Bros. Brawl and putting it, we're actually giving it to Garen once Garen in a game. If you play Garen and you hit rank 5 on your E, it will actually be turned into Meta Knight's Neutral B, his swirl, his tornado, giving it a knockup, faster cancellation, and actually an execute because people were able to kill with his neutral B, I believe, in the game, and it did provide some knockback, which, to be fair, nearly all abilities in Super Smash Bros. Provide a knockback, but we do believe that at Riot that Garen kind of desires CC, and we didn't see him getting it in any abilities other than his E, which will kind of replace Wukong's ultimate on a basic ability, with generally it being faster, a basic ability, and an execute. Um, we definitely think that this is going to make Garen a more popular champion, and honestly, we could not care less if Wukong becomes forgotten. He may have gotten a mini rework, but realistically, we simply don't care. That champion can't sell as well as Garen, so we'll slowly make Wukong into Garen. In fact, we do believe that we will be devolving Garen into a more primitive state in one of the next patches to make him more aligned with Wukong's aesthetic, and then maybe a patch or two after that we will completely erase Wukong and make it so that Garen takes his place. Then we have Gragas. Gragas excels at being a drunkard, and he will use that excellence to peer pressure enemy summoners into drinking, which will impair their motor skills. And this is incredibly effective against underage gamers because number one, they'll have lower tolerance, so you could probably get them blacked out if if Gragas is nearby and peer pressures them even 2 or 3 times. Number two, they might even get in trouble with their parents. And, their parents will take away computer privileges if they see them drinking. So those are the main two reasons why it's more effective against minors, but overall it's an effective strategy because it will make it harder for them, for the summoners to pilot the champions, and also it'll be even more effective against Rumble, Corki, Sejuani, and Nunu because they are piloting either vehicles or pets, so their motor skills will be impacted negatively. So you might see, Rumble spinning out into an alcove or Corky crashing his plane into a Drake. Only time can tell. This is definitely something that we'll be monitoring because, like the Caitlyn ultimate, we don't necessarily want to lose our player base in terms of them literally dying. So we will be keeping an eye on Gragas and the obituaries in several of the hotspot player locations. But if we could realistically see this as a reason why our new Budweiser sponsor will want to put mini fridges in professional games at Worlds, just to ensure that the alcoholic beverages are as cold and crisp as they can be if Gragas ever gets picked in pro play. Now we have the Smoke Man himself, Graves. Graves will now be able to inflict bronchitis onto enemy champions regardless of the fact that they have lungs or not, which will force enemies to take breaks after walking for too long and will CC them by making them take breathers. This is, us at Riot. We want to promote healthiness, and by trying to promote this idea that we want healthy lungs, we want smoke to not be a problem anymore. To pay more attention to if there's a fire in your house or something to that effect. We want to make sure that people keep their lungs nice and pink. So, to show the effect that it could have on a league champion, to show that, you could be in the middle of chasing someone and you have to take a breather just because of smoke inhalation. This really paints a picture of the negative impact that that smoke inhalation, that smoking can cause for people in real life by, kind of making it analogous to League of Legends champions. So, Graves, another example of our numerous health initiatives at Riot Games to make gamers even healthier while they're playing our game for 12 hours and spending all their money to be better at it. We have Janna. Janna's Q will now kind of blow the player into Kansas. Not literally though. It will force them to reconnect to a new server we are opening in Kansas. This is a very, very tricky situation because Players in Kansas that are normally connected to a different server in America will have a server in Kansas to connect to, so they will be playing on zero ping. So if there are any pro players, maybe Faker um, is from Kansas, he'll be playing on zero ping. I'm not sure about that. I'll have to fact check it, but if Faker is playing in Kansas and he gets hit by Janiq, he'll get relocated from the Korean server um, and to Kansas, and he'll be playing on zero ping, and he will be able to demonstrate a lot more of his raw talent, whereas players in Europe, players in Australia, Korea, Asia, all those players will suffer greatly from having to relocate to Kansas and having, very high ping just because they got hit by one Janna tornado. So Janna is a high risk champion that we want to monitor, but we have such a burgeoning player base in Kansas that we kind of wanted to give them more to look forward to at Riot. So this is why we are opening a server there. We have Jarvan the Fourth. Jarvan the Fourth in this new patch will be a Democrat and carry around a Biden flag in celebration. A quick PSA before I go any deeper in this. I'm Canadian, so I don't really care too much. I do have opinions on the election, but I feel as if anyone who mentions their politics, it's not really a wise decision to necessarily mention politics unless it's an incredibly popular opinion. It seems pretty divisive, so all I will say on the topic is Jarvan will anger Trump supporters with his Biden flag and will put them in denial. This was more of a cosmetic update than anything, but we didn't want to just put in a cosmetic update, so we attached something gameplay changing to make it so that the change has a higher impact, and so that you feel the change more, you feel the visual update more by making it so that there's gameplay changes associated to it. Now we have the Skittle Master himself, Mr. Karthus. Karthus will make the enemies diabetic if he hits them with too many Qs. Now his Qs used to look like Skittles in the early days, so that's why they're called, affectionately dubbed, Skittles. And these Skittles, once an enemy champion is hit by too many of them, and it'll be a variable amount. Like Gragas would take much less Skittles than Ezreal to become diabetic, and then after that, it reaches a certain threshold where a champion might have to get one of their limbs amputated. We're talking about a foot is the main example that we have here, which will greatly hinder the movement ability of some of these champions by making them have to deal with having one less foot. So this adds a different dynamic where Karthus players that are really good at aiming, really good at hitting their Qs, can go from lane to lane and actually just go intentionally feed to the turret just to hit the foot amputation threshold on some of these enemies before a fight. So it'll be an excellent change to monitor. It'll be an excellent change to maybe even see in pro play if it's still out there. And there'll be a lot more thinking. There'll be a lot more theory crafting around Karthus and his ability to hinder enemies' movement by getting their limbs amputated. At Kassadin, it's a very simple one. Starts the game at its current iteration. By level 18, reverts him to a season 3 iteration with, all the bells and whistles, his silence, and really, there's nothing much more to say other than Kassadin will be reverted to his season 3 form at level 18, which, as if Kassadin wasn't powerful enough at level 16, once he is level 18, he will be so insane that you might as well just forfeit. Which, speaking of forfeiting, we have a champion that will want to make you forfeit if she gets a KDA of 4 or higher, because once she reaches that threshold, if she gets one kill in a 5v5 team fight we are working on just saving everyone's time by making it so that she just instantly gets a pentakill. Because any Katarina that has a high KDA like that, if she gets one kill in a 5v5 team fight, will most likely kill everybody. So we're just working on streamlining the process of games to make them faster, to make it so that you can fit more games into a day, meaning that, maybe you play more champions and you want to buy more skins, or you verse more champions like Arya and Anivia and you want to buy some poultry um, or some cat-eared headphones, which is also a convenient time to announce that we are rolling out our Riot Chicken, which will be a freezer food coming in 2021. But that's just a quick plug. Katarina will be able to get Pentacles somehow even easier than she used to be, and she was already one of the easier champions to get Pentacles on. Then we have Kennen. This one's short and sweet as well. Kennen will be able to paralyze enemies or he will have a chance of paralyzing enemies every time he stuns an enemy. If the summoner playing Kennen has a Pikachu in any save file of a Pokemon game, this is not exclusive to main story games or mainline games. This is any Pokemon game, any legitimate Pokemon game. We're not talking about Pokemon Tower Defense or something to that effect. But, Kennen's immobilizing destruction will be quite deadly if he lands a paralyze onto enough members, if he gets a large enough ultimate, because that could greatly hinder the enemy team. And also with Boris's lack of Medicare for affordable Medicare, he does not have any antidotes to stuff like paralyzation. He only has useless potions and stupid elixirs that you only buy when as a luxury. So we're talking about Boris in terms of him expanding his options to be more health based, just like we at Riot are. We are a health based company nowadays. Um, we will keep you posted on that in our new health roadmap, talking about our promotions for a more active lifestyle. And we have Kha'Zix. Now, this is a promotion of a more scientific lifestyle, where Kha'Zix simply deals more damage if the enemy champion that he's attacking, Summoner, does not believe in evolution. And he can do up to 200% of his damage just if the enemy Summoner doesn't believe in evolution. And it really doesn't get any simpler than that, honestly. Kha'Zix was notable as being Charles Darwin's one trick. I think he got to high plat in the early days, which is pretty respectable. Sadly, he can't be here to see this change, but there is definitely someone in his lineage that is practicing double jumping just to put the Darwin name back in reasonable elo for the Kha'Zix mains community. So we're definitely not only looking forward to see Kha'Zix's data on this patch, but looking for any summoner that may be related to Charles Darwin to monitor their climb, and maybe we can force some players on the teams he's versing to pick a female champion and throw one of his guys on Corki to make sure that old Charlie has a relative in Diamond or higher. We have Kled. Kled is a champion where if you play him and you live in a southern state or have a good southern accent, Kled will be able to remount any number of times in combat, and his unmounted Q, more importantly, does not have a cooldown, because the NRA does not believe in that type of suppression, in that type of restriction of firearms. It's just not right to control someone's firearms that way, and Kled doesn't believe that that is constitutional, that is fair, so he will fire as he pleases, he'll fire at who he pleases. And that's just the way Kled is going to be this patch. He's going to be a lot more mobile, and in its unmounted form, he's going to have a lot more damage. Kled's gun does a lot of damage. And he'll be able to remount as many times as he wants, which Kled is going to be a very annoying champion to deal with. But all it takes is a female champion on his team, and you could see Corki flying down with the package, making him surrender. So this patch is definitely going to be um, incredibly interesting to pay attention to see the average game time and all those statistics. Definitely going to be an exciting patch to theorycraft on, and we'll see if it lasts until pro play. If there are not more changes being made to make it even more hectic. Then we have Kog'Maw. Kog'Maw will be able to target items in enemy inventories and dissolve them as if they were carbonate salts, and his auto attacks were, let's say, lemon juice, something acidic. This will make it so that Kog'Maw can kind of do like Silas does, where Silas will jump out, steal an ultimate before a fight, and then fight with it. But Kog'Maw will be able to walk out, melt some items, and it melts items into components. And if there's not room for components, um, com- it will sell the components for sale price, and it will start with the least expensive ones. And this will make Kog'Maw an incredible nuisance because he'll be able to eat away at gold, which will let him, you know, it'll buy him more time to purchase his items and scale up. This spit will only work on mythic or legendary items to be fair. We don't want to be too unbalanced, but yeah, Kog'Maw will definitely be a force to be reckoned with if he can just run out and melt a bunch of people's items before a Baron fight or a Drake Soul fight. Then we have LeBlanc. LeBlanc and her clone will recreate Two Girls, One Cup and force the enemy team to watch it during the respawn timers. I don't have um, a visual example of this because it is quite frankly abhorrent, but it will definitely put some players off their game. It'll definitely make some players play better. So we're gonna be monitoring that, and we might be issuing some bans for the players that have a noticeably higher win rate against LeBlanc than they had pre-patch. But generally, I think this could be a change that will lower the game of a lot of enemies that versus LeBlanc and make them incredibly uncomfortable. And quite frankly, some of them might vomit on their keyboards, which will make it so that our Riot Games cat ear keyboards will sell more than they would have because people will be in the market to look for new peripherals because there will be pieces of carrot and corn wedged between their keys and they don't necessarily want to take them out to clean it. And then now we have Nico. Very short and sweet. Nico's E becomes a targeted spell that always roots if used against a champion whose summoner is homophobic. Um, Great technology in our technology department to be able to isolate homophobic summoners and make the ability targeted. This is a great way to throw a quick sweep in a team fight and then report people, but it's also a quite insane buff to Nico, where the one thing she depended on was to hit a max duration root, throw it through an enemy onto your target and then just blow them up. Um, it didn't mention it in the patch notes because Google Slides ping was high and it didn't input properly, we'll say, but it will root for the highest duration, which will make it insane if, let's say the enemy Draven is a homophobe and he's very fed, Nico just flash E's him, can't avoid it, rooted for 3 seconds, dead. So Nico will definitely be really strong against the right players. This one is not a change that's going to make the champion overpowered. It'll be something that we monitor. Maybe we increase it to transphobes or any LGBTQ plus bigots, we can always add that. But right now, we're just working with homophobes to make sure the numbers aren't too unbalanced. And with that, thank you all for watching. Hope you found some entertainment with it. And gonna try and upload at least once a week, maybe a little bigger of a gap. But as always, I do appreciate whoever takes the time to watch this. And well, see ya.